Greetings, everybody. How's everybody doing? I'm Brett Abdullah. I'll be your instructor this semester for CIS 111 Database Development. 50% of this class is online, and we will do each chapter discussion of the section notes online. And then every Thursday, you're expected to be in class, and that will be from 5:25 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. on Thursday afternoon, evening. So the more you're in class, the better you're going to be at this because you can ask me questions. And so we'll do the notes online, and we'll do the correction of homework and other things in class. And of course, the test. One important thing to understand is we're going to go over a language called SQL, or SQL query language. And we're going to spend a lot of time doing that. And this class is actually harder at the beginning of the semester. And it gets easier at the end of the semester. At the end of the semester, we will be developing a database for a bowling league. And that's actually kind of fun, and I'll allow you to pair up in teams if you so choose to. I think collaboration is really good, but that's strictly up to you. You can also do it on your own. So let's go over the syllabus, and let's talk about what's on the syllabus first. Let me share my screen out. You see some of the normal stuff that is on the syllabus. And of course, you have access to this through Moodle. You can see our dates and times. You can see what room we're meeting in. That's that high-tech room that we're going to be using on Thursdays. And I hope to record Thursday sessions, but no guarantees there. I'm hoping to. I suggest you get the book. You don't have to have it, but this is the book that we're going to be using. Everything that will be on your test, though, we will go through in our class notes. And of course, about Moodle and Hotmail, and you can see the grading scale. It's pretty straightforward grading scale. And I'll just tell you this, I do tend to round up. And here are all the points you can get. We'll have 7 practice labs for chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then they are all worth 10 points apiece. Let me just tell you about the practice labs. If you do them, you're going to get 10 points if you turn them in on time. There'll be 6 assignments. Those are the ones that I'm going to scrutinize more, and they'll be over. Some of these chapters will be combined on the assignments, but they're worth 30 points apiece. Again, there'll be a due date for those, and we want to make sure you do that. There'll be 3 tests. Each test is worth 50 points. This is how I can tell whether you're doing well or not. And we'll have one project that I told you about that will develop a database for the bowling league, and that totals 450 points. And you can see the how many points you need to get for each grade. Okay, so in our syllabus, we also have the desired schedule that we hope to follow. And I say desired because sometimes we fall behind, but hopefully we won't. You can read the attendance policies here. I'm currently not going to be checking up on you. I feel like you're in college. You need to come to class. If you decide not to, I can guarantee your scores will hurt from that. Academic integrity. I believe that we're getting more and more serious about offenses here, especially with the chat GPT and Ted, I think, I forget what the name is, but I'm going to look into that. We're going to be looking for this, and you're going to see that I allow that you can use your books on tests. You can use your you can use Google to look at syntax. I have no problem with that. I don't expect students in any of the programming languages to remember all the syntax. But with that said, if you cut and paste questions from the test or the assignments into any website, I consider that cheating. Okay, I'm just going to be straight up with you. Don't do it. I will be looking for it. We do have accounts and all these things. I can plug something into Chat GPT too. I know that our assignments and our tests are out there online, different websites. We get it. We do change things as we go through. So please don't cheat. You're not helping yourself by cheating. You can see some of the attendance policies, never attended. What I will tend to do is if you go through the semester with me and you have a failing grade, I will probably drop you from class. Okay. Yeah, and we'll be using a lot of Moodle. I will, in this class, I will be having you email me your assignments. Okay. I'm not going to have you load them up on Moodle. You can email them. There'll be .SQL extensions, and they easily go through our email system. Okay. So it's your responsibility to go over the syllabus. And if you have any questions, you can certainly ask me. All right, let's move right into Chapter 1. A database management system, otherwise known as a DBMS, it's software that allows you to run a relational database. Why are they relational? You will be learning a lot why we call them relational. Okay, so how this looks is the database server, at least at the school, sits somewhere. In our campus, we have a database server. You have clients, which are PCs that connect to the network, and we can get to the database server through the cloud. So we are going to be on premise, but some of you are going to be using Macs. Macs are hard to use for SQL Server because SQL Server only runs on, it does not run on Macs. So we have to fool it, or we use Windows Azure. But anyways, that could be problematic. It has been problematic in the future, in the past. So just want you to be aware of that. If you have a Windows PC, that is preferable. Now, so I'll say a few things about data. Data is probably the biggest commodity, the most valuable commodity that the world has today. It's in politics. It's in AI. AI would not be possible if it were not for the amount of data that we could have in a database. We do things like we look at data from the Weather Channel, we compare it with something, let's say from, I don't know, Target or some store, and these stores can tell whether, hey, on a rainy day, am I going to get more customers? Do I need more employees at work or not? So data tells us stuff. Doesn't tell us absolutes, but it does tell us stuff. And you're going to hear terms like the Internet of Things. What that means is that data is being sent from all types of things today, and they're analyzing that data and they're making decisions with it. Okay. And if you control the data, in a lot of ways, you control the world. Google is a very good example of that. They create algorithms that nobody knows what they're doing. In fact, my last gig, I was to pull all the data from Google. I was to get the numbers from Google and figure out if Ford should use F-150 as one of their keywords, for example. And we had to figure out what way was that, what keyword should Ford use to get more looked at through Google and other sites as well. So data is huge. Now, like I told you, we're going to be using structured query language or sequential query language. This is the language that allows us to get to the database. So we're going to be learning a lot about SQL. Now, if you're going to be a computer programmer, you're going to use SQL no matter what language you use. I will just tell you that. And basically what we do is we send a query through some service and it requests data from the database server, and the database server sends back the appropriate data. That's what SQL does. You're going to become very familiar and hopefully comfortable with SQL. And so you see it, this is a select statement. We will be using select statements throughout the semester, but this is your typical select statement. And really the select statement is made up into 4 different parts, which we will discuss later. But by running this SQL statement, we pull back this data. I also want you to know I'm very big on naming conventions, indentation. I think computer programmers, even though I know some of you are going into network security, even with your batch files and network security, you need to document your scripts and your programs well. And a lot of it's done with indentation and blank lines. In this case, I'm using something called Camel Case, really a version of it. It's usually it would start with a lowercase n. But anyways, so this is a select statement, and you will become very familiar with this. Relational databases. Now, relational database is a set of organized data that is designed and modeled relationally to be effective and efficient for retrieving data. Yes, I did just read the line. We will talk much about the data being normalized, and we'll be learning that more back in chapter 10. But we normalize the data, which creates great relationships, and it allows us to efficiently and effectively store the data, update the data, and read the data. This is called online transaction processing. The higher the normalization, the less inconsistencies and anomalies you will run into. And again, I'm not going to go too much into that, but we will see this quite a bit. So relational databases is a database contains tables. So if we are talking about object-oriented programming, the database would be the parent, the tables would be the child. But the table also has children. They're called fields, otherwise known as columns. And so you can see this is a layout of a vendor's table in the accounts payable database. Okay, and you can see different columns or fields, and you can see that a database table has a primary key, and the primary key basically identifies everything else in this row. If I'm looking at vendor ID 1, I know I'm looking at the U.S. Postal Service. There won't be another U.S. Postal Service in there. There's only one, and these are some of the parameters. And if we are identifying the primary key, it would be vendor ID. Okay, and every row is a vendor row, and it identifies one and only one vendor if it's normalized properly. And then we're going to talk about relating two tables together by using a common field. For example, every table looks like a two-dimensional matrix. You're pretty familiar with that if you use Excel. But we're able to relate the vendors table and the invoices table together. Now, the vendor, we know that there's one vendor, okay? But we could have multiple invoices. In other words, we could have made multiple orders from that vendor, and each of those rows would be an invoice. And the way we, instead of putting all the vendor information in each time for each invoice, we just put in the primary key. And so this is the primary key. And this, my friends, is the foreign key, because it's really the primary key of the vendors table. And we will talk a whole lot about that. Okay. This is an example of a one-to-many relationship. Why do we say that? Because one vendor can have multiple invoices. Okay. And then we talk about table structure. How is the table structured? Each table is going to have a structure contained in the database. Initially, we will be using existing table structures, but at some point, you're going to be asked to make your own table structure. And this is the example of the table structure for the invoices table. Again, you see vendor ID here. You also see invoice ID. Invoice ID would be the primary key. Vendor ID is a foreign key. And a table can have multiple foreign keys. It can have zero to many foreign keys. We're also going to be utilizing data types. Data types are very important in SQL, and it has a whole bunch of them. As you can see with int, big int, small int, tiny int. And why do we have such a variation? Because each of these ints are either smaller or larger and take up more or less data space, disk space. Bit, by the way, will be our true false. 0 or 1. That's exactly what that means. And if I was to translate this over to access, access would take the bit and make it a true or false field. All right. And here's some additional data types. Okay. Money, small money, decimal, numeric. Some of these are more precision, some are less precision. For example, money only goes out to the 4 characters to the right of the decimal point, where decimal you can go up to 18, I believe. All right. Next, we're going to be using software called SQL Server Management Studio. I will be asking you to load this on your computers. We will also have it available at the school. I have set up a sheet to help you to install this. And again, I'm going to be asking you to install it. And what we're going to do is we're going to be installing SQL Server 2019 Express, and then you're going to start up a database service called SQL Express. It will automatically set up. So you're going to really be loading 2 different things on your computer. Okay. And then once you load these things, you will click on the Windows Start button, and you'll go down to SQL Server's tools, and you'll see Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio 18. Really, you can use different ones. And you can connect either by using the name of your computer. Here is the server name. You're going to be using Windows Authentication at home. At the school, you're going to be using SQL Server Authentication. Okay. So, but when you're at the school, the server name will be CIS111. At the school will be SQL Server Authentication. Okay. And I will be providing you with a user ID and password at the school. At home, you won't need that because you'll be using window authentication. And this, again, will be filled in with your computer name, or you can use localhost SQL Express. All right. And once you are connected, you will see a window that looks like this. And you'll see we're going to load 3 different databases on your computer, which I will go over with you on Thursday. But your setup's going to look something like this. All right. So this is the program files you're going to be running. This is where the data sets. There's 2 different languages we're going to be learning. Database manipulation language, select, insert, update, delete, and then data definition language. This is how we deal with the objects of the database. Okay. So this is chapter 1. Let's now bring up chapter 2. Okay. I'm going to close this down. Let's go back to so we're right here. You can see all the stuff that we're doing. So let's look at something right quick. These are the same notes we've been going through. And now let me go over let's take a look about how to install SQL Server. So what you're going to do is you're going to download and install SQL Server 2022 Express and SMS. Okay. And so you go to the site, you're going to download it. It's going to install two things. It's free, and SQL Server 2022 should automatically start. And then it should also install SQL Server Management Studio. You're going to install version 19.1. It'll actually work with different versions. Okay. And you're going to follow those instructions on your local PC. And then finally, we're going to create 3 databases. Okay. And let me just show you how that works. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to go into each of these scripts. This is the account payable script. After you've loaded SQL Server, and by the way, the icon looks something like this. Bring up SQL Server. And I'm going to actually drop my accounts payable and I'm going to reload it. So SQL Server Management Studio is loading up. It gives me access to this SQL Server, which has been loaded on my computer. So this is the client to get the SQL Server. So it's slowly but surely coming up, and I will drag it over as soon as it comes up. But what we're going to do is we're going to basically copy and paste this SQL script, and then we're going to execute it. And I'll show you how that works. As soon as my slow computer comes up. Okay. So as you can see, has my my computer name. I could also type localhost here, SQL Express 01. I'm going to use window authentication at home. I'm going to connect to the database. And like I told you, I already have the 3 databases loaded, and I can delete them, which is actually a drop in database terms. So I'm going to delete this one just to show you how it works. You should not have this one. So so what I have to do is I have to make sure I am in the master's database. Okay. And now I'm going to open up a database, a query window. So I might say new query. When come over as blank, it should show that I'm in the master's database. Okay. And you can tell what database you're in by going right over to this little window here. And now I'm going to go back to the script in Moodle. And here I am. So I'm going to do a Control A to select everything. And then I'm going to do a Control C to copy everything I've selected. Then I'm going to come back to SQL Server. And I'm going to do a Control V to paste all that into this window. And really at this point, all you got to do is hit execute. Now, if you do this multiple times, it might not work, but if you do it one time, it should work. And when you don't see any red down here, you're going to learn to not want to see red down here. It means it worked. And if I go back to that database I deleted, I have to refresh my databases. So I hit refresh and we should see the database show up. Okay. So I would advise you to try this. Okay. Um, if you can't do it, we'll talk about it on Thursday. But on Thursday, we're going to start looking at chapter 3, and I hope to record that, but we'll see how far we can get through chapter 3. It'll be great to meet you on Thursday. So that's what I have for chapters 1 and 2. It's your responsibility to watch this video and, of course, to understand it. And then I will see you on Thursday. So long.